Let me tell you what, Penn State announcers, you guys are trashing every single one of those position groups except for, no, you're trashing all of them, actually, because every single one of Ohio State's position groups outplayed you on Saturday, and they took you down and handed you your first L of the season.
Welcome back to the Rivalry Podcast.
Let's
Jace and JP, Michigan and Ohio State, your garbage-free football podcast. Sports talk without the tangents from River Radio Ministries and presented by Elevated Integrity Construction. What a wild weekend of college football.
Was it great?
Honestly, not as bad as you would think.
We'll
get to that. We'll get to that.
Weekend all around. A phenomenal weekend in Sad Valley had by all.
You were telling me as well that you had a really good sports weekend overall for a particular reason. You were telling me before we hit record here.
Yeah. I didn't watch the Browns at all.
And that's all it takes.
Ohio State won on Saturday. I was at the game. Michigan lost. Michigan State lost.
Which we can all get behind that one.
I got home just in time to watch my Cleveland Cavaliers game start against the Milwaukee Bucks. They won on a buzzer beater, which was just an insane game. And so I woke up on Sunday and I told the Browns, not today. I will not be, my day will not be ruined today.
I'm reclaiming my time. Mm-hmm. Also, shout out to the 7-1 Detroit Lions, head of the NFC.
Phenomenal game. I did watch that one.
Anytime the Packers lose, it's a good day for everybody. You can't spell Lambo without the L. Okay, we're not here for that though. Let's start with a little bit of wheel route on social media at RivalPod, Twitter and Instagram, and at RivalPod.com.
I'm so juiced up. I almost forgot what I was doing over here.
I'm ready to go. Man. If you're not watching on YouTube, get over there at RivalPod.
I had a James Franklin for a moment. Which player is the most overhyped? Oh, this is so easy. It's not even fair.
Which player is the most overhyped?
Yeah.
Okay, go for it.
Drew Aller. It's not even close.
In all of college football.
In all of college football, the most overhyped.
I don't know.
The most
about
overhyped. This dude, and it's going to be recency bias, but this dude has been talked about as a first round pick in the draft. Everybody's talking about Drew Aller's different every single year. It's the exact same story. Drew Aller's one of the top quarterbacks in not only the nation, but in the Big Ten, and blah, 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 blue, blue, blue. He's trash. The guy is a trash can every single time it comes to a big game. He's not had one single solidifying moment against a team that means a single darn thing in any meaningful college football game ever. The guy is trash.
Okay, so are you a fan of Drew Aller? Or
I wanted to be. Honestly, when we went a couple of years ago to Penn State and saw that Ohio State Penn State game, leading after the game, that was who was their starter at the time? Sean Clifford. We looked at Drew Aller and we said, this guy's gonna be good. We were so wrong. I
don't know that I ever said that.
We'll
have to go back and find the tape on that.
We were so wrong.
All right. I've got a real spicy one for this one. This is not, hey, I think this is a bad player. It's, hey, I think this player's overhyped, and it's Jeremiah Smith.
You are, no.
You want to talk about having a meaningful moment in any meaningful game? What did he do this weekend?
He had some good catches.
Did he?
Yes.
He dropped a wide open touchdown that would have put the game away. I can tell you that.
He still had a great, decent game.
Here's what gets me. And again, I want to be very clear. This is not Jeremiah Smith's a bad player. He's a great player. But if we're asking the question as overhyped, anytime that man touches the football, and I love Gus Johnson, but he would catch this little pass and he'd go out about, and it would be Gus Johnson, money rising, Jeremiah Smith. I'm like, my guy, he's wide open and caught the ball.
That is the problem you have with Gus Johnson.
No,
I
love Gus.
Smith.
We're talking about overhyped though.
Jeremiah Smith just broke the freshman receiving record at Ohio State, who has had names like Chris Carter, Marvin Harrison Jr., Jackson Smith, and
I'm not concerned about
Garrett
that.
Wilson.
I'm talking about overhyped. I'm talking about the media overhype of, and you were guilty of this too. This is the greatest
in the nation.
He has played 8 football games, maybe 9. I don't know where you guys are at in your season,
and he's already that good.
And the decision that this is the greatest, and I've heard Klatt say this too, the greatest wide receiver ever at Ohio State,
not wrong,
and is going to be an NFL Hall of Famer, maybe the best receiver the NFL's ever seen. He's played 9 games.
If he is healthy,
half of them against the MAC.
If he is healthy, I would bet all my money. Not that you should bet.
Don't do that.
Don't do that.
This is a ministry podcast. But if one was going to,
JP was going to, I would bet the bank on all of those things being true.
And I'm not saying that they won't be.
If he's healthy.
I'm saying that the overhype right now is off the wall. And it's got to be pulled back in.
We are going into week 11 of the season, and this past weekend was his first collegiate game. He did not score a touchdown.
Cool. So you guys have played 2 massive games this season, and one of them he didn't do anything.
He still had nice catches. He had a decent game. You're not going to go out there and put up 100 something. Absolutely.
The overhype is real.
That take is so freezing cold. It is not even funny. I'm going to pull that clip. That has to be a reel because I'm going to pull that clip and replay it over and over at his induction ceremony in front of your darn face.
We will not be friends at that point.
Wait, we're friends?
You guys have been friends this whole time?
Not today.
This is The Rivalry. Thanks for being here. Let's talk, though, about Ohio State and Penn State in all seriousness. This was a massive game for so many reasons. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the talk from the media side of things, which we're just as guilty of as anybody else in the media, was the Ryan Day versus James Franklin. Neither of these guys can win a big game, so something has to give on Saturday.
Had to win.
And Ryan Day comes out on the right side of that.
Yeah, there's so much you could talk about. First off, if I have to read any more tweets from Penn State fans talking about officials, I'm gonna get drunk off all that wine. It is just horrible.
So let's start with that though, because I think that's an important piece of the conversation because it did not cost Penn State this. Let's be clear: if you are a Penn State supporter, frankly, it doesn't even matter. Buckeye, Wolverine, we can both sit down and say, officials did not cost Penn State that football game.
No.
What cost Penn State the football game
head coach
is 2 drives that ended up inside the 10-yard line that got 0 points.
And I'm not even going to go there and say that Penn State was unlucky on that. I thought that was darn good defense from the Buckeyes. But I'm going to give credit where credit is due.
But on the officiating side, there's an argument to be made for Penn State that they can be rightly frustrated and furious with a couple calls in that game. I don't think there's much question about that. The taunting call is one of the worst calls I've ever seen.
Fair.
No, it wasn't.
It was fair. The man stood over the player,
dude,
and looked down at the man the entire time he was doing it.
How many times a game do you see that?
And it should be called every single time.
Oh my goodness, you can't call that every
rule,
time.
But it is a rule. I as a competitor, zero issue with it. A rule is a rule.
You can
zero issue.
If you're going to call that, which there's no way on God's green earth that you should be calling that penalty.
Don't step over a player. Don't look down the entire time you're doing it.
If that's the way that we're going to call the game, which again did not cost Penn State, want to make sure that is perfectly clear.
No.
But if that's the way we're going to call it, then when Penn State's in on that critical drive where they're going into the end zone to try to tie the game, there's a towel laying on the ground. One of the defensive ends for Ohio State picks up, flings it at Drew Aller. Right at him.
Zero problem.
That's an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. That's the exact same 15-yard penalty.
Get it out of his way.
Just threw it right at the quarterback. Mm-hmm. So for all the talk of, and this is really the greater issue.
Did he throw it first at him? I thought Drew Aller threw it over the line. JT threw it back, and then Aller took it and threw it off to the side.
It's the exact same ticky-tack stuff where if as an official,
he threw that towel farther than he threw any other pass that entire game.
If as an official you're going to say, we're going to let them play, then let the guys play football, because Penn State is also going to be upset, and rightfully so, not the interception play, but the play in the second quarter, I think. Maybe still first, but I think second quarter, where Igbenogsen's just got a jersey full of the Penn State wide receiver and nothing's called. And I believe it was the next drive for Penn State or for Ohio State where the guy steps over him. So just the inconsistency from the officiating, and it's not just a Penn State, Ohio State thing. The inconsistency from officiating across college football is out of control. It's absolutely out of control.
It showed me all the complaining that I heard, just showed me a real loser mentality and why Penn State will always finish third or worse in the Big Ten. Because I saw people from the Penn State side going and showing the replay of the Judkins fumble. I did that with quotations. It was not a fumble. If you want to consider that a fumble, let me show you a Clemson game from a couple years ago.
Okay. So now we're back. Now we're back to the one. So the Penn State fans are whiny, but let me go back to 4 years ago.
I'm saying whatever was called was called. You can disagree with it. I would argue the Clemson, and I'm not going to go far into that. I would argue that Clemson call was an egregious call. That was a fumble back in the day.
And by the way, this will shock. I agree with you.
And I know you would, because you are a football guy. You watch enough football to know Judkins never had full possession. He did not take clear football steps.
Here's my issue with the Judkins one, because I agree with you. I agree with you that it was not a fumble. However, and this is really, again, this is the wider college football issue when we're talking about inconsistency and, well, that's unsportsmanlike because he stepped over him, but you can chuck the towel and that's not one. oh, he can hold there because we're going to let him play, but we're going to call it ticky-tack over here. The Judkins one is another good example of inconsistency because on the field, that's called a fumble. On the field, called a fumble. I'm watching the replay. I'm going, I don't think that's a fumble. I think it's an incompletion. But I think, based on vibes, is not the rule. The rule is indisputable video evidence. And this is not just the Penn State, Ohio State thing. Think back to Virginia Tech, Miami, right? Virginia Tech beats Miami. We don't have to keep having this conversation about Miami continuing to skate by teams, okay? But the officials insert themselves and go, now we're going to overturn it. That's not indisputable. It's not based on, I've just got a good feeling about this one. I was there
even in person, I didn't think it was a fumble. Then I saw the close-up video replays of it, and I thought, there is nobody that watches football on a consistent basis that sees that and goes, yeah, that's a fumble. Even in slow-mo, you can see he never has possession. He's getting the ball and trying to switch to another hand to grasp it. He gets hit. He doesn't make a football move. It is every single by the textbook thing to overturn.
But it's not indisputable.
I would absolutely disagree. I think
the fact that we're having to have this conversation is a great example of it not being.
Of course, you're going to think.
I'm agreeing with you. I don't think he had control, but it's not based on do I think or not.
At the end of the day, was it the right call that they made? Absolutely, and I would rather them make the right call than just.
But that's
their whole job is to get a bad call they made on the field right, and they did that.
Regardless, though, the officiating wasn't the issue. Penn State just.
Here's the issue.
James Franklin, what are you doing?
There are things, I'm not going to focus a lot on the negative stuff for Ohio State because there are some. I mean, Will Howard played better than Drew Aller.
Yep.
I don't think there's any question about that. But he had 2 costly turnovers. He had an interception early to put him down 10-0 that every single person in the universe knew he was going to throw to. It was the most. I could have picked that off, and I am slow.
I'm not a big, and we've talked about this in the pod. Like, you're not going to get a ton of like X's and O's analysis here. Like, oh, they're in this base defense and they're going to shift here. Like, that's just not our vibe.
No,
but if I can, I've used the Office quote. These muffins taste bad. Mm-hmm. Watching real time, I watched him snap the ball. I watched him turn and just stare down Jeremiah Smith. In real time, I went, oh. Yep. And sure enough, these Division I athletes that are better athletes than I could ever hope to be, read that right off the bat.
You had that, which was a huge mistake early on. Honestly, looked like things were on the brink of getting out of hand really quick.
And a good and to his credit, a great response.
And here's the thing that I want to note really quick about that. It would have been easy for Ryan Day to start to go away from him and kind of show, okay, he's got some nerves. Let's go to the run game.
We got to settle him down.
Not subbing him out or anything, but play calling would have changed based on that.
Be conservative
they went
to
right
settle
back
things
out
down.
and they threw the rock. And that next drive, they got the ball. They went right down and punched him in the mouth.
Yep.
And then they came back down the next drive and punched him in the mouth. And it was mostly due in part to Will Howard. So I really liked that actually from Ryan Day and Chip Kelly that they continued to go with their guy and they didn't show that they lost a little bit of trust in a big moment. Yeah. 111,000 fans ready to tear the roof off that. Not the roof, but you know what I'm saying. There is no roof there, but ready to just have a great time and celebrate.
Largest crowd in Beaver Stadium history.
But there's so many good things from that game if you're an Ohio State fan. And I feel like the whole week prior, everybody was just ripping this team and just the doubt was more than I've seen for an Ohio State team in years.
Can you blame them though?
To an extent. Like, I think being concerned with the offensive line was a real thing. I actually liked how they adjusted the offensive line pregame. This is before I even knew how the outcome was going to be. I liked what the decision making was to just kind of switch some more experienced guys around so they had a more experienced line. It did enough. Chip Kelly had some amazing play calling as far as the run game went. There's things that I thought
he called a really good game.
Very, very good things if you're a Buckeye fan. Outside of the pick six, you gave up 2 field goals.
Yeah.
That's it. You won that game 20-6 minus the one mistake from Will Howard. You had a lot of bend, don't break moments. Yep. You had the phenomenal interception by Igmanosin in the end zone. You had the 4th down, which I went to the play calling. It was at OSU's 3rd, 3-yard line. Katron Allen run for no gain. 2nd and goal. Katron Allen run for 1 yard to the OSU 2. 3rd and goal. Katron Allen run for 1 yard to the OSU 1. 4th and goal. Drew Aller pass incomplete to Khalil Dinkins. You had a 4th and goal from the 1.
Yep.
James Franklin, horrible play call, by the way, but I digress. You had a moment where
we'll come back to it.
You
I've got so many things
your
to
back
say.
was against the rope.
Yep.
And you would let them drive down the field. And you stopped it.
Yeah.
Right before the half, you let them drive down the field.
Yep.
And you stopped it.
Well,
this Buckeye defense showed up again and again.
And that stop, by the way, like, let's give a little bit of credit here. Like, objectively, to Igbinosun.
Yeah.
Because
the play before,
a horrific mistake, and rightfully so.
He's had a handful this year.
He has had a handful of the opponent's jersey just about any time he's targeted. And so Penn State, great idea to go ahead and target him because he has not been that good. He had just made a huge mistake, got a holding penalty, and still let the man catch the ball. Like, do one or the other, my guy. Yeah. And then makes just a fantastic play to intercept it, get the ball back. But that's a big play.
Here's the thing, and then I'll hear your opinion on this because there's two more things I really want to hit on.
Yeah.
So
there's so much, dude. There's so much.
All week long, you hear about Ohio State's offensive line, how they average 2.1 rushing yards a game, and they did the most Michigan-esque thing you could have done. They went in at the very end.
Yeah,
you go down after that 4th and goal stop, and Chip Kelly goes, "Stop us," and he goes 11 yards starting from their own 1 yard line. 11 plays, 58 yards, and took the final 5 minutes and 13 seconds off the clock to seal the game.
Does it feel does it feel better being on the other side?
Sure, it does. If you want to be surrounded by that fan base, and mind you, why I'm so animated isn't just because I'm a Buckeye fan, but because I was in traffic getting into Happy Valley for almost 3 hours to drive literally a mile, and I'm listening to their local sports station. And they must have been outside of the stadium because they kept talking about the crowd and all this stuff. And they sat there, and before the game, and I'm sure this is how a majority of people view Ohio State fans too, right? But you're listening
to you're about to say, the answer is yes.
You're listening to this broadcast, and they're going, yeah, let's break this down position group by position group. Aller's better than Howard. Our running back duo is better than Judkins and Henderson. Our offensive line is better. Our defensive line is better. Our linebackers are better. Our receivers aren't better, but if you took Jeremiah Smith away, it's pretty even. Our secondary, it's better. They didn't give Ohio State a single position win outside of the receiver group. And let me tell you what, Penn State announcers, you guys are trashing every single one of those position groups except for... No, you're trashing all of them, actually, because every single one of Ohio State's position groups outplayed you on Saturday, and they took you down and handed you your first L of the season. And me having to listen to that for 3 hours driving into the stadium was enraging, and I was hoping that Ohio State people inside of that locker room heard all that noise all week, that Penn State was going to come in there. This was the first time they were going to not let it be 8 wins in a row. This was the year they were going to get over the hump. Guess what? You didn't, and it's Sad Valley all over again.
There was
the thing that really impressed me.
Okay.
And then I'll be done.
Why don't you just keep going, man?
I'm gonna, because Ohio State rushed for 179 yards on 38 carries. They averaged 4.7 yards per carry. Shut up. The offensive line is great. The run game was doing everything they wanted to against Penn State.
Let's slow down. Let's slow down.
Here's the thing, and then I'm done. Then I'll be done. This is the thing that really made the difference for Ohio State on Saturday. 2 penalties for 15 yards, 0 of which were pre-snap penalties. There were 0 false starts that entire game from an offensive line that needed to come in there and play well in front of 111,000 rowdy fans. That crowd noise was the loudest I've ever heard it in any football stadium I've been in my entire time on this podcast. And they had 0 false starts. Absolutely massive from top down for the Buckeyes. People all weekend long were saying, is this the best win of Ryan Day's career so far? I think I still might put Notre Dame last year over it because I'm not sure if he loses that game plus the Michigan game and the Mizzou. I'm not sure that a 3-loss Ryan Day keeps his job.
See, I think it's this one.
But I think it's close, and I would be fine. I would be fine dying on the hill that it would be this weekend.
Because the Michigan one in 2019, number one, is 5 years ago. Okay. Mm-hmm. Like that it's been 5 years since Ohio State beat Michigan. So, and also that was very much an inherited team from Urban. So this one here feels he was coaching for his job.
Oh, and he was
losing this football game at the very least puts your season on life alert.
Mm-hmm.
If you make the playoff, you are going to Georgia. You're going to Texas. You may still end up in that position. Okay. The season's not over. You've got Purdue this week. You've got Northwestern, but then you've got Indiana, who we're going to talk about here in a little bit. And you've still got to win the game. I don't care what kind of record Michigan has coming into it. You still have to win that game. And so, I think it's probably the biggest win of his career. What is infuriating for Penn State fans is I saw somebody afterwards, and I don't know who this was. Maybe it's somebody important. It doesn't matter. They had described it as being a Penn State fan is like being in purgatory. And it's like, yeah, because there's so much promise that, eventually, this is not a theological discussion, but go with me here. Eventually, there's some promise there. But right now, it's nothing but suffering.
So what's funny is the night before the game.
And that's what it feels like for a Penn State fan. It's got to. You can't seem to get past Ohio State or Michigan.
This was a wheel route question we didn't get to, but the night before I was staying with a guy, he's a huge Philadelphia everything fan. So he likes Penn State, likes the Flyers, likes the Eagles and all that. So we're just kind of talking about the game and everything like that. And he said, Penn State's the best job in college football. And every fan base wants to think that, but his points are valid. I think it's actually true. It was going to be my answer because he said, you have one of the biggest stadiums in the nation. You have a dedicated fan base.
Yeah.
It's a great football town. You get NIL, you get recruits, you get a competitive team.
You're in one of the super conferences.
But you're in the Big Ten. You get the TV deals. You have zero pressure to ever win anything. He said James Franklin goes out there and wins 10 games, and there's zero pressure. I mean, there's pressure to win the game against Ohio State or Michigan, but if you lose, James Franklin's been there for years. I mean, years and years.
I think the seat's getting hot, though.
I think it's getting toasty now.
That's the only place that I don't
Ohio
disagree.
State or a Michigan coach had this kind of a career,
for
record,
sure,
they would have been gone 4 or 5 years ago.
That's why Harbaugh was on the hot seat until 21. That's why
Ryan Day.
That's why Ryan Day's sitting there after 3 years.
Only 3 seasons. And so I thought it was just an interesting point of view because even his mindset before the game was, people at Penn State hope that Penn State will win, but they're not going to be surprised when they don't.
If you're Penn State, you have every right to be frustrated with James Franklin. Because at some point, and this is for our producer, Eric, who hates this movie, it's the Ice Age thing again, right? They do this every year.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again. At some point, you have to go, I mean, in, what was it? 17, they were 1 point away. 18, they were 1 point away.
They're close all the time.
They were a score. It ended up being a score away last year, but it was like 13-9 or something for a huge chunk of the game in Columbus last year, something like that.
Weirdly, the same final scores last year.
This off by one.
Was it 20 to 12?
Because they tried to go for 2.
I thought it was 2013 last year.
But the same type of thing where they were very much in this game. You had the ball at the end of the first half, and obviously Igbenogson picks it off. It's like, that's got to get in the end zone. There's no excuse for it. The goal line sequence where they go for it on 4th down and don't get in. I mean, you nailed it when you were reading through the plays. You got a yard. You went for no gains, but then you got a yard. You got a yard. Why would you not go for another yard? It's the opposite of the 4th and 5. Let's run a halfback draw. You remember that one in Columbus? Was it in Columbus or in Penn State? From a few years ago where it was classic James Franklin, 4th and 5, game on the line. Penn State's got to convert, and James Franklin hands the ball off. Inexplicably. It's the reverse of that. Run the ball up the middle.
Pete Carroll's in shambles watching that,
honestly,
right?
Trust your off. Yeah, did we learn nothing from the Seahawks?
It's like the blind side. Hey, James, run the dang ball.
It's just...
Enough with the trick plays.
At some point, the coaching has to go, I don't know, man. It's been 8 years. Maybe it's me. You would think, and I think this was the first weekend that I remember seeing the Penn State fan base actually kind of get animated because he was getting heckled while he was walking off the field. And I'm not a fan of that, but I get the frustration because this happens over and over again. And again, listen, like I get that you're maybe not wanting. You're like, oh, they know we're going to run the ball. Then make them stop you.
Yeah.
Drew Aller's not a small man.
I have said it a million times on this podcast.
And by the way, Tyler Warren took a couple carries as well.
He was their leading rusher.
Give him the ball.
You have Katron Allen, Nick Singleton, and your tight end has had the most rushing yards.
There is no reason for them not to run the football there.
I have
absolutely
said it.
Even if the play works, absolutely no reason. And I hate when people... And we'll move on from Ohio State here. I hate when fans go, well, I'm more upset about the opposing teams, winning than my own team lose. But for Michigan fans, by the way, knowing you were probably going to get boat raced by Oregon, which didn't quite happen. We'll get to that. But knowing you were going to get beat by Oregon, I was far more frustrated about the Penn State goal line sequence than I was anything that happened in the Michigan game.
I've said it a million times before.
That's how deep the hate runs.
If you are a Division I program or a professional team in any manner, if you can't trust your offensive line to get a yard, you don't deserve to win the game anyway. I said it a million times ago against Ohio State. I will stand by that. You are a Penn State level Ohio State, a Michigan.
You got to get a yard.
And you have guys in the backfield named Nick Singleton and Katron Allen.
You've got four different guys.
With a big-bodied guy like Drew Aller.
You've got four different guys that could have got the ball and none of them did. Ridiculous.
Honestly, if you're not that confident in your running back, I'd put an O-line or a D lineman out there and make him try to take down the big boy.
Well, it's Tyler Warren. You've got your tight end.
Literally anything. Frank Jenkins, my hero.
Once again,
love a good appearance from him.
Once again, it's the, I realize we're making this reference the week of an election, but it's the Donald Trump, turn off the lights, turn off the lights.
It's the Jared Allen, the lights were too big.
They just really were.
Ohio State.
Hey, you get to play JV squad this week.
Yeah, we get to play Purdue. They've lost 7 in a row. Their lone win coming against Indiana State to open the year. This is a game where I'm actually really excited to just get a breather and just kind of chill. Because it was Oregon, then a bye week, then you had Nebraska, which was closer than you'd like. Yeah. Now you're having Penn State.
Nebraska should have been a breather and it wasn't. I can guarantee you this one is not going to end up like that. Purdue is a terrible football team.
They don't do anything well. Rushing, they're fine.
They tried to beat Illinois that one time, and that was like the little it's still alive.
It's not great. Their offense kind of reminds me of Iowa without a Caleb Johnson. And so you can imagine just how bad that's going to be. What's your final? I don't feel like we need to take long. Mine's 49-3.
Give me 56-10.
You think they get a touchdown?
I think they find a way to score somewhere.
I'm actually very interested. I know what are you interested in for Purdue?
I'm going to be really honest with you. Nothing in this game is interesting.
I'm excited.
Nobody outside of us and the Ohio and the respective fan bases and also me are the only people watching this game.
I'm actually very interested to see how the running game goes again. I want to see how this offensive
line. Run all over them.
I mean, I think it's going to go well, but I'm excited to see this offensive line again. I think it's going to be an absolute domination from start to finish.
You get 2 weeks. I'll stand by this. The offensive line is kind of strung together with like sticky tack and paper clips and stuff right now.
They
did play well. They played
in a tough environment.
Will that hold up at the end of the year? We'll find out. But that's a tough place to go into. And so credit the Ohio State offensive line. Like objectively as a football fan, that's a credit to that offensive line.
0 false starts is incredible.
And to hold up. To hold up to give you guys
almost 180 yards on the ground.
And you've got a couple
4.7 yards.
And let's be honest, you've got a couple weeks to gel where there's going to be no pressure on Will Howard.
That's what I'm excited for this week and then at Northwestern. You got a couple weeks to get it
clean jerseys for Will Howard and company. Hey, maybe you feel a little bit like James Franklin and Penn State. You know what you're doing isn't working and you need to transfer in a lot of help. Maybe also make a coaching change. Our friends at Elevated Integrity Construction are the portal to a successful project. Our friend Aaron and his team, they've been doing this a long time with more success than James Franklin has. They'll communicate openly and honestly, leave you wowed at the finished project. Also, unlike James Franklin, home, church, or business build, go with the folks with integrity in their name, elevatedintegrity.com. And of course, the Rivalry is also proud to be part of the Varsity Network this season. The Varsity Network, powered by Learfield, is a must-have for every college football fan. Free to download in the App Store and Google Play Store. Enjoy live college football games and podcasts just like this one. Search for your school or search for the Rivalry Podcast to find tailored content in the Varsity Network app. By the way, don't forget you can support the Rivalry with exclusive merch. We've got some gorgeous t-shirts for whichever side of the fan base you support. Rivalpod.com. Just click on support. And if t-shirt's not really your thing, but you still want to throw a little bit towards the podcast and say, hey, we love what you guys do, want to support you. We've got postseason stuff in all likelihood coming up for Ohio State. And so with a small budget, your support makes a big difference. You can go to the Buy Me a Coffee link. It's also at rivalpod.com. Just click on support and be sure to follow across social media at rivalpod. Let's talk about Michigan and Oregon. Michigan schedule has not gotten any easier, and it won't again this weekend as they get ready to head to Bloomington for Indiana. My big premise going into the Oregon game was that this was not really about Oregon. We knew what was going to happen in this football game. We knew Oregon was going to be Oregon. Michigan was going to be in deep trouble regardless. This was really, for me, more of a litmus test for, at the end of November, can you compete? Will you even be in the game at the end of November? Because this here, Oregon and Ohio State, I know Ohio State got ranked 3rd this week. Ohio State's number 2 right behind Oregon. Let's be real about that. Mm-hmm. I'll be very interested when the college football playoff rankings come out on Tuesday night. I would not be shocked to see Ohio State slide above Georgia, go to number 2. But regardless, this was about Michigan playing one of the nation's elite teams. Can you hang with them? And surprisingly, Michigan did for a huge chunk of this football game. Michigan also incredibly shorthanded, and this may feel like beating a dead horse, but this is incredibly important. Without Will Johnson again, the All-American corner.
How many in a row is that for him? Just two?
Two, but he's
been on and off. He's been out banged for the USC half for
He's
half
been
of
banged
that.
up all year. He dealt with some injuries last year. I keep seeing folks saying, "Oh, he's packing it in. He's packing it in." No, he's not. He's not packing in. That's not the kind of player this is. But also, if he's not healthy, he's not going to go and risk injury. Like there's a difference there. Yes, there's probably an element where he's trying to protect himself long term. Absolutely. But I don't think this is I could go, but the season's over, so I'm not gonna. I just don't see that. The other thing that Michigan ended up dealing with is not only is Will Johnson out, but Jair Hill is out as well. So Michigan gets to play the electric, probably one of the nation's top offenses without cornerback 1 and cornerback 2. You're going to have a bad time. It's not
looking great, yeah.
But admirably, I mean, Michigan is in this game in the fourth quarter, which is more than I think most people would have given them credit for at that point. My big takeaway again was, can you compete? Can you give yourself a shot in November? And the answer is yeah. Michigan didn't play a fantastic game, but they played enough to show some competition. No Will Johnson, Jair Hill made it incredibly difficult. The Davis Warren, sorry, getting ahead of myself there. The Davis Warren Colston Loveland connection was on fire. Colston had a great game. Somebody on the Michigan beat had remarked, can an inept offense still get a tight end to win the Mackey? They're going to try, because Colston Loveland is still the best tight end in the country.
I saw people talking about Warren from Penn State,
Warren, who's also very
good. It's Colston Loveland, a different animal.
Imagine if we had a quarterback over the course of the year who could consistently get him the ball. But Davis Warren and Colston Loveland had a good connection in that game. So there's good things to like from this. There's still just so much for Michigan that, I mean, Oregon was just flat out a better team. There's not much question about that.
Yeah, I mean, 38-17 is still not an ideal score at all. That's still a blowout.
But I'll also say, like, if you box score watch it and go, well, 38-17, not even close. They scored that touchdown with 50 seconds left in the game. This was a 31-17 game. And here's the key. Here's the key for Michigan. It's 31-17. Michigan has the ball inside the red zone and can't convert. Not as close as Penn State, but still four plays, can't convert. You're staring down a 1-score game late in the fourth quarter. The goal for Michigan is to win that game. My hope going into the game was, can you compete? Can you show some fight? Can you put some things together? And they did that. I am not pleased with the result, but I am pleased with the execution for the most part. Here's where I'm going to really just rail into this Michigan side, though. And it's going to be on the coaching side.
I was going to say, I knew right where you're going. I've got a couple other things, but
coaching failed these players. Michigan was not going to win this football game. I've seen some stuff float out there. Well, if this had been called differently, and if you did this thing, Michigan wasn't going to win this game. However, Michigan was in this football game middle of the third quarter and late in the game still. And coaches, with just some of the most abysmal things I've ever seen. The big one that's been circled is Michigan has a 4th and 5. So this is when it's 31-17. So again, you're in a 2-score game. You're at like the 15-yard line or whatever. 4th and 5. Davis Warren has been hot. And Kirk Campbell decides on first down. I think it was I can't remember what the first down call was. Second down call is an Alex Orji run. Third down call is a run play that goes nowhere. So it's 4th and 5. And he decides that he's going to call not Davis Warren looking for Samaj, Davis Warren looking for Colston. He takes Davis Warren off the field. Alex Orji is out there. And it ends up being a reverse to Samaj Morgan, who then looks to throw the ball back to Alex Orji. That's your ball game. You have a chance to make this a ball game late in this game and give yourself an opportunity. And you dial up what is probably the single worst play call. And I've thought about this a lot. Probably the single worst play call since the Michigan TCU game. Do you remember early in that one, Michigan TCU, where Michigan takes that opening drive?
About
it's like 4th and 2 down inside the 5.
Yeah.
And Michigan tries to call and Michigan calls the Philly special. With a Joe Moore award-winning offensive line.
Yeah. Doesn't make
no sense. That's what that was. That's the single worst play call since that moment. I don't think it's worse than that, but is the single worst
moment.
Is the single worst play call since that moment. That is when Kirk Campbell gets launched into the sun at the end of the season.
When he ends up on James Franklin's coaching staff.
Number one, can I push the button? Number two, that is exhibit A in the courtroom of evidence for why you don't have a job. There's a number of other things too. The usage of Alex Orji in the Michigan State game felt like it was tactical, felt like it was thought through. This felt like, let's just chuck stuff at the wall and see what happens. It was nonsensical stuff. Kirk Campbell, again, Michigan gets the ball in plus territory. I believe it was 20. It might've been 31-17 at this point. I can't remember the score. It was in the third quarter. Michigan had been down 28-10. So it was 28-17. It was 28-17. Michigan has stopped Oregon on the opening possession, gone down and scored, stopped Oregon again, has the ball at like the 48. And he calls 3 passes. Kalel Mullings, I don't think, was even on the field for that drive. Like, I don't know if he forgot his birthday. Did he not compliment a haircut?
But here's what I'll say.
What is going on?
Here's what I'll say about Kalel Mullings, though, because Kalel Mullings has been absent the past 2 games.
Because he had 8 carries.
I'm looking at this, but he had in the past 2 games, so Michigan State and the Oregon game, he has had a combined 21 carries for 34 yards for an average of 1.6 yards a carry.
So he had 12 carries in the Michigan State game and 8 on Saturday against Oregon.
Yeah.
That's abysmal.
He should be getting the ball, but he's got to do something else with it. Even Donovan Edwards, he had 50-something yards, but he had one that was like almost a 20-yard rip, and then other than that, there's
no doubt the run game was not there in this game. And again, I'll credit as much Oregon's defense as anything else. But the usage, and again, like you're trying to chart patterns here. You're trying to chart patterns, and when you look at the pattern of Kirk Campbell, you go, the play calling doesn't make sense. The usage doesn't make sense. What are we even doing here?
The one thing of note for Campbell, I was looking at this and I was listening to this game as I was driving back from Penn State. And the offense to me just feels very Jekyll and Hyde.
Yes.
When it's clicking. But I wanted to make note, so I wrote down on non-scoring drives for Michigan, because you guys had 17.
Yeah.
7 of those came after a fumbled punt from Oregon.
Yeah, special teams gave him a short field.
You started at the 28. So outside of having that field position, which you guys still drove it in, which was great, but outside of that, you put up 10 points as an offense. On non-scoring drives for Michigan, your offense to open the game had 3 plays, 3 yards. You had another drive, 3 plays, -2 yards. 5 plays, 14 yards. 3 plays, 5 yards. 3 plays, 2 yards. This wasn't excluding, obviously, before halftime or in the game where it's 3. You're not even moving the ball. When you're not scoring the ball, you're doing nothing with it. And so it's like
by definition, either you're scoring or you're doing nothing.
You're not helping your team at all. You're not helping your defense because you're not moving the ball 20 to 30 yards down the field to make them get in deep territory. You're doing nothing with it at all. And so you look at this and you're going, okay, when you're not scoring, which you only had 1 touchdown if you take away the short field.
Oh, but you can't take away the short field, I'm saying that's not how that works.
I'm saying
I get what you're saying. You're saying the consistency from the offense isn't there.
When the offense, when you guys are scoring, the drives look great. I thought the play calling on the 1 touchdown drive you guys did have of length, even the one where you went towards the end of the game where it was a turnover on downs.
Yeah,
I still thought up until the last,
it was a good drive. It was a good drive.
It was solid play calling. Colson Loveland was getting active. I liked it. But if you guys are this is what, if I'm a Michigan fan, I am just frustrated beyond all belief is at the beginning of the season, you're watching Donovan Edwards struggle, but you're watching Kalel Mullings just take the team on his back.
Yeah.
And you're struggling at quarterback, and you're going, if we can just figure that out to be serviceable, this offense can win us some more ball games that maybe we thought we were going to lose.
Sure. Yeah.
And then you're at a part now where you go, okay, well now Davis Warren, clearly the guy moving forward. Yeah. He's not an elite, whatever, but he has played well enough. He's taken care of the ball.
And that's the thing. He's not turned the ball over.
He's gotten the ball to the playmakers, Colston Loveland. And he's done what he has needed to do. And now Donovan Edwards and Kalel Mullings are failing him. And that's not all based on the players, because you still got to make the most when you get the opportunity. You're switching. It's just the first part of the season, the run game was going. Now you're struggling again.
Let's be honest about it. Like, Michigan is an average football team at best. In the 2024 version of Michigan is an average football team. And so there's not really a way around that. But what I want to see is I want to see a game plan that makes sense from Kirk. And like ultimately this falls on the shoulders of Sharon Moore, but Kirk's the one calling the plays.
The coaching staff to me this weekend has proven that they're not at that level
Sure, and I thought this was fair. Like somebody had, like there's frustrations with Sharon. Absolutely, there are. I'm going to give you another one here in a moment. But someone on the beat had pointed out, he got placed / ended up needing to hire because again, Michigan lost not just all these playmakers on offense and defense,
whole coaching staff,
the whole staff, at least the big boys, right? Head coach, offensive coordinator, defense. This is an impossible position in one sense, but also that's where I go. He got stuck with coordinators that are just out of their depth. Wink doesn't know what he's doing. Kirk doesn't know what he's doing because I said this after the Michigan State game. You saw some drives from Kirk where you went, that was a brilliant drive. And then you get stuff like the Oregon game where it's 28-17. It's mid third quarter. You're making a push here. By the way, if the touchdown, air quotes, that gets overturned, and again, like Michigan doesn't win the game, but then you're staring down a 24-17 game mid third quarter with the ball. Mm-hmm. You're staring down that fourth down play. Michigan probably kicks it there. You're now staring down 27-20 way in the fourth quarter.
Well, so what was that when the Evan Stewart touchdown was grabbed and ruled a touchdown?
He just dropped it.
But he dropped it. I'm agreeing with you. Yeah. But like what down was it? Because you're not taking, you can't just, was it third? Yeah. Okay. I couldn't remember.
Yeah. So I'm doing a little math there. It's like, okay, assume they make the field. Yeah. Again, it doesn't cost them the game in the long run, but that game,
huge play.
But that game feels very different, and and it changes some of the things. So you don't run Samaj Morgan to Alex Orji pass.
Well, there were a couple other moments too,
things like that,
where it was the Colston Loveland catch, where everybody in the universe knew that it wasn't going to be rolled, and they did a challenge.
And that's was going to be my beef with Sharon. There is you've got to have guys that tell you that's not. You have to survive the ground.
Well, you had that. Then you had, and you'll have to forgive me because I was driving back, so I don't know if this was the same play or not. But I believe there were two circumstances. One was on a fourth down punt for Oregon, where the players just lined right up over the ball.
Oregon
nobody calls a timeout. Nobody does that to save the penalty.
Spot
on.
It
extends the Oregon drive. Then there was another time in that where Oregon was going quick. You knew they had the personnel to go quick. And you're trying to sub players off the field, and it ended up costing you. You got another penalty.
And that's where, again, at the end of the day, I'm looking at this from a player standpoint going, I'm really impressed with the players. I'm really impressed with the fact that you had your two top corners out, and you somehow found yourself still in a football game with Oregon late. That's impressive. Like, I'm impressed by that.
As a Michigan fan, you didn't expect to win, but there were a lot more positives than negatives.
It's not a clean game. No, it wasn't, fantastic execution. Oh, they just blew my mind. But that's the number one team in the country in a game that you probably could have gotten boat raced. And unless you're
21 points,
unless you're watching the box score.
21 points is 21 points.
See,
you use that against Ohio State?
No, I have not. Because I don't do that. A couple
years ago when it was 45-27, but you scored a touchdown with 5 minutes to go. No. You've absolutely used that.
The box score watching is going to look bad, but if you watch the game, you go, this is a team that played Oregon well and really played above their ability. Let's be honest. Michigan played above their ability there, down two guys. The coaching staff at the end of the day, and then we'll move on to Indiana here. The coaching staff at the end of the day failed these players. Michigan wasn't going to win this football game, but they sure as heck lost the game for them. How do you challenge a play that's so obviously incomplete? You got to know the rule. How do you not have your guys set because you're trying to sub when Oregon's not subbing? Mm-hmm. Inexcusable. Absolutely inexcusable. How do you not call timeout? Oregon runs out a funky punt formation. How do you not call timeout and go, we can't line up over the center?
That's
the
reason they're not going to be there next year.
That's not on, and I don't even know which player that was. That's not on the player. I don't care. That's not on the player. That's on staff to go, timeout. We can't do that. You just stop them. You are trying to claw your way into this game. You're trying to keep yourself in a game that would be a monumental shaking upset. And you're going to do things like that. You're going to run a Samaj Morgan pass. That's the infuriating piece of this for Michigan. So when you look ahead to Indiana, I think it's going to be a lot of the same. This is not my thing. I'm not trying to steal this. Someone else had remarked that Indiana right now, if the logo was changed, is a top 5 team. If it wasn't that little IU logo, it's a top 5 team. This is an incredible football team. They are ranked. Guess where they're ranked offensively in the country right now?
It's got to be up there. They've not lost a game, but they've won every game by double digits.
3rd in the country in scoring offense. Higher than Ohio State. Higher than Oregon. They are averaging just shy of 43 points a game.
I have many thoughts on this.
And you can go into strength of schedule. You can go into 100%. All that stuff. but also 43 points is 43
points. In front of you. I think both can be true. I think it's fair to question the legitimacy. They
routed Michigan State on Saturday. Mm-hmm. They went down 10-0 and then scored 47 points. That's terrifying. That's because again, that's above and beyond anything anything that Michigan, but anything that Oregon did to them, anything Ohio State did. That's 47-10. Curtis Rourke is currently 6th in the Heisman voting right now.
Yes, that Curtis Rourke
is currently
Ohio transfer.
Is currently at 6. He has 19 touchdowns.
I don't think they've scored less than like 35 all season.
It's been close. It's only been a couple times.
There every single time.
They scored, I think, 31 against Washington, but Rourke didn't play.
It was 31-17.
But he didn't play.
Yep. You're right. Still
19 touchdowns, 3 picks, 2,200 yards of passing. I think it's going to be a lot of what you saw against Oregon. I'm not sure that Indiana is at the same level as Oregon. Oregon's just playing lights out right now, but so is Indiana. And I think Michigan's going to have the same struggle to keep themselves, if they want to stay in the game the way that they did against Oregon for a majority of that, they're going to have to be more sound. They are going to have to start quicker than they did against Oregon. They did okay. They wasn't bad against Oregon for starters, but the game got away from them late in the half. It was like 14-7, and then Oregon tacked on 2 touchdowns near the end of the half. Can't happen. If you're going to play in this game, it can't happen. The keys for Michigan winning this game, I mean, it's going to be the same thing every week, I think, from here on out, right? You got Indiana, you got Northwestern, and then you've got Ohio State.
That's just how you should pronounce Northwestern from now on.
I do. Until morale improves, man. It's going to have to be Michigan's going to have to win the turnover game. By the way, they did against Oregon.
Yeah. Because it was only 1-0. It was the special teams one at the very beginning.
I think you're going to have 2. I think
What's your final here?
I think for Michigan to win this game, you're going to have +2 turnovers. The run game, and you nailed it, by the way. The run game is going to have to be better. Michigan has had 119 against Michigan State, 105 against Oregon. It's got to be better. 8 Kalel Mullings carries, regardless of, is he having success? The offensive line, listen, the offensive line's banged up. I get it. Gentry's out for the year now. It was either Percy or Preeb was struggling there. Evan Link's back out there now. I get it. But if you're going to win, Kalel Mullings has to get a lion's share of carries, and it's got to get better. And the other piece of it is just health. And that's something that's something you can't control. I mean, credit guys like Amir Hall and Zeke Berry. I mean, I don't think either of them had a great game, but you're thrust into one of the most impossible positions out there.
Against explosive receivers. I mean, I would rival up there with the Ohio State.
The health of Will Johnson and Jair Hill is going to be critical here. If they don't play in this game, it's going to be uphill again. Indiana's just scoring too much. 38-20. I think Indiana. I think Indiana wins. I think they cover. I think the spread is 14. Yeah. I don't have much trouble with Indiana scoring 38. I think Michigan probably scores 20. Again, I just gave you the path to winning, but like we said last week, the path is filled with poison ivy and razor wire. It's there. It's doable. But boy, I mean, tell me a hotter team right now than Indiana. I don't think there is one.
I'm shook right now.
Why?
I have Michigan winning this one.
Are you? Where's the real JP?
Well, the real
You're doing
JP
what?
play stand up. And here's why. And this is going to come across cocky, but it's more of exactly what you said while you were watching Penn State, Ohio State. This is a test for my eyes for both of these teams because Ohio State has both of them on their schedule.
Yeah. Indiana, by the way, on a bye next week, which means they play Michigan and then they play Ohio State.
Yes. And I'm looking at this Indiana team, and while I agree they are much improved, I think you can't deny that. I'm looking at their strength of schedule, and I'm going, their best win is Washington, who is not good. And they won 31-17.
Without Curtis Rourke. Which is huge. That's huge.
But still, their next best wins are probably Nebraska or Michigan State, who we both know are trash cans. They are not good. Take away whatever the disgusting Ohio State-Nebraska game was. Nebraska is not as good of a football team as people thought. Michigan State,
can't take it away, though.
Not as good of a football team as people thought. I just haven't seen the true test. And when I look at this Indiana team, I'm not doubting them. I think they are a good football team. Do I think that they are 9-0, 10-0? Do I think they're a threat to beat Ohio State? This is where I'm going to find out. Because to me, Michigan is by far leaps and bounds the most physical team that they will have played.
Agree.
It's the best defense they've played by far.
I think I'd agree. Yeah.
And I think
defensive line, certainly.
I think as disgusting as the offense has been at times, I think you guys give matchups that they're not used to seeing yet. I think
they are starting to gel.
I think they're starting to gel. I think Davis Warren being able to protect the ball has been huge. I think he's going to continue that path. I think Khalil Mullings and Donovan Edwards are the best running back duo that they've encountered yet. They're both physical runners. I think Colston Loveland's going to be a tough matchup for them. And I think, honestly, Indiana might be sleeping on Michigan a little bit. I think they're seeing Michigan.
I don't think there's a chance.
I know you're traumatized because of years past.
Well, but Kurt Cignetti is,
and he's
first of all, the most unlikable coach in the Big Ten right now.
I love him.
Besides Ryan Day.
Him in the press conference, and this is where we differ on coaches because I love Deion Sanders. I love the cockiness because Kurt Cignetti getting up there.
Something about me, I win. Google me.
Yes, him getting up there and saying, well, how do you convince recruits and transfer players? And he goes, it's easy. I win. Google me. Lifetime contract, Indiana. Who's your coach for the rest of your life? It's Kurt Cignetti.
Well, and this is the best. This is the best season that Indiana's been playing football since 1899. I looked it up.
Yeah,
they have only had 9 wins once since 1899.
Insane.
1 9-win season. They have never won 10.
Yes, and so
and by the way, whether it's Michigan, Ohio State, or Purdue at the end of the year, they're going to win 10 games.
And so I'm looking at this team and I'm putting all those factors together, and it feels more like a trap game for Indiana than it does for Michigan.
I don't think Indiana's getting trapped at all by this dude.
I could be wrong. This is just my
I hope you're right. I hope this is prophetic speech.
I'm looking at these factors and I'm going, I think this is a get right game for Khalil Mullings. I think Davis Warren, the way he has been trending, he's played better each of the last 2 weeks.
I agree.
I thought he played very well against Oregon, and I think Oregon's defense is a heck of a lot better than the Indiana defense.
Agree with that too.
And so I have zero problem taking him as having another great game. I think Colston Loveland has also been trending up from the Michigan State to the Oregon.
Amazing what happens when a quarterback can get you the football.
So I look at this, not that I think Michigan's offense is all of a sudden an explosive dynamite, but I'm looking at it and I'm going, they're starting to get their groove. All they've got to do is get this run game going. Yep. They're a more physical team than Indiana has faced. They are defensively the most physical team that Indiana has placed. And I haven't seen, if Indiana goes out there and handles business like what you're saying, then I'll start to get worried a little bit more about, I still think it'll be a close game in Columbus. I don't want this to come off as like, they're nothing, we're going to just dismantle them. That is not the mindset at all. I think this is a still team that could threaten Ohio State. I am looking at this through Buckeye lens going, which is your job. We play both of these teams. I need to see something from Indiana before I fully am convinced that this team is real.
I think whether Indiana wins this game or not, I think Indiana coming into Columbus is going to be an incredible game. Because here's the deal. Like, let me just throw this out there. Let's say Indiana does lose to Michigan. Indiana still has everything to play for in Columbus
because one loss doesn't keep them out.
A win over Ohio State would keep Indiana in front of Ohio State for the Big Ten.
Mm-hmm. So
right now, based on just the numbers,
Penn State's out.
It's Oregon. It's Indiana right now. Who had that on their bingo card to start the year?
Absolutely nobody. I've got a final score: Michigan 27, Indiana 24.
Done. Deal. Taken.
I have more faith in your team than you do.
Because I've watched my team. Oh, thank God for 2023, man.
Spoiler alert, that is also my stupid genius.
Michigan over Indiana?
For good reason.
Because that's what we said, 14?
14-point spread.
Okay. I also went with a big gap because we suck at this.
We were not. I don't even remember who I said
You took Pitt over SMU.
I don't even know what the final was.
It wasn't good.
Let
me just say it wasn't good. I took Arizona over UCF.
That was not
also
good.
Horrible. So I don't love the fact that you took Michigan. Actually, come to think of it, I'd like to reverse.
I did that so that if they won, I would look very smart, but if they lost, I would be very happy.
I'm very smart.
It was one of those James Franklin-esque calls.
Because I did not, number one, because we've been so bad at this, and because there's just really not any spreads that are 5.5 or greater that I liked this week at all. I'm going to roll the dice and go with some action.
Give me Tuesday some action. Night. Let's go.
By the way, stupid genius, 5.5 point spread is the rule. You pick it right, you get whatever the spread was. And I think I'm up by 0.5 on you.
You are up by 0.5.
Because we've both picked
Michigan
We've both picked exactly one game correctly all season. Give me Ball State at 12.5 over Miami, Ohio.
Okay.
Action on Tuesday night. I'm going to find out my stupid genius tomorrow.
Yeah, amazing.
The only thing that anyone will be tuned into on Tuesday night, besides the college football playoff rankings, obviously, we'll all be anxiously waiting for the college football playoff rankings
to see the winner of the Ball State,
to
Miami,
come out,
Ohio.
To find out what happens there. Hey, on social media at Rival Pod, be sure to subscribe wherever you're listening right now. If you'd like to support the podcast, we'd sure appreciate it. Rivalpod.com. Just click on the support tab. A couple different ways to get involved right there. Another great weekend of football. Thanks for being with us.
OH.
The Rivalry is a production of River Radio Ministries. Want live updates from the show? Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at RivalPod. To learn how to support the show, shop our merch, and read our blogs, visit rivalpod.com. Make sure to follow us wherever you're listening now. And if you like what you're hearing, tell a friend so they can listen too.